Hey there. If you're a frequent listener to our show, you already know that our show is brought to you by our friends over at Artillery Sports. But what you may not know is that Artillery Sports helps athletes of all types win on and off the course and court. They do this by selling quality, durable, and precision manufactured sports equipment that keeps you in the game, while also using a portion of the profits to provide the funding needed to care for our nation's veterans. With Artillery Sports, it's more than just a game. So head over to artillerysports.com today to buy the quality equipment you need to keep you in the game and to help our nation's veterans at the same time. That's artillerysports.com. Make sure you head on over there today. Oh, and use the code DOCFIRST to get 10% off your first order. Welcome, everybody, to Documentary First, an inside look at a documentary filmmaker's journey. I'm your host and documentary filmmaker myself, Christian Taylor, and I'm joined today with a couple of very talented first-time filmmakers with a new super revelatory documentary that they've just finished. Welcome to the show, Brandon and Whitney Cawood. It's really nice to see you here. Thank you so much for coming.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
We're excited.
So we've just become friends. You reached out to me in a unique way. Tell me about that.
So we are at the tail end of our making our documentary, and so distribution is a big thing on our minds right now. And it's distribution is that like thing that nobody really fully understands or knows. And so throughout this whole process, like you said, this is the first time we've ever made a film like this or made a film. So I have leaned on podcast a lot. I listened to Alex Ferrari a lot for a while early on, and just started looking for podcasts about distribution, and happened to find your podcast on Apple Podcast, and listened to it, and it was really cool. And so I listened to another one, and at this point you've gone on 10, 15 runs with me. That's normally when I listen to the podcast when I go on a run. So I just I liked the fact that you were coming from a first time filmmaker perspective, and also that you were a Christian, and you talked about that. And then you had a lot of, hearing your story about your distribution journey and things like that. So I was just really intrigued, and I was like, I really liked her podcast. And I reached out to just tell you that I liked it. And then
you reached out to me. You slid into my DMs.
Yeah, on Instagram.
I'm jealous.
So reached out to you, and just initially telling you that I enjoyed your podcast, and letting you know if you ever wanted to talk to a husband and wife team that were first time filmmakers, to let us know. And you said, sure, here's the email, sign up. Send an email.
You invited yourself onto this podcast, basically.
Well, it was beautiful. We do this podcast in order to help and inspire other filmmakers. It's absolutely the reason I do this every time I get on the show. And I really hope that it's useful. Sometimes I sit here and I think, gosh, is anybody listening? And does it really matter that we do this? And so to get a note saying, you've made a difference in our lives, and thank you for doing this podcast, makes a difference to me. And I really wanted to hear more about what you were doing. So I'm so glad you wrote. It really thrilled me. And I'm so happy now that I've gotten to see what you've done. It's just fantastic. So let's dive into this show, and let's dive into the film that you made. So I'm going to start by reading the summary of the show, and then I'll let you guys tell a little bit about yourselves. So Here we go. Parents turned filmmakers Brandon and Whitney Cawood embark on a fascinating quest after discovering their child's sensitivity to synthetic dyes. Their documentary journey delves into the profound impacts of these chemicals, featuring meeting with leading experts and heartfelt interviews with affected families. Through poignant stories and scientific evidence, they unveil the hidden perils of synthetic dyes, igniting awareness of their far-reaching effects on individuals and families. And what I will say as well, this documentary was also a very personal journey. That's not really in that, summary, but I walked away feeling like you shared a lot about who you were and what was going on with your family, and that really drew me into the story. So thank you for sharing a little bit about your lives, and for the courage that it took to make this documentary. I know what it takes now. I didn't when I started out. And I know that filmmaking can destroy a family, and it can really like stretch the fabric. Divorce happens. It's a real thing. But here you two are sitting together, smiling and laughing. And both of you have your hair, and you have your, noses and eyes. And so it sounds like you made it through that. So I applaud you. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I did start losing my hair though. I do want to point that out. It has now stopped falling out, but that was a real thing.
Yes, so mine too, and I think we go through phases, where our hair falls out and then it comes back. But anyway, don't worry, you girls that are listening to that are younger, it grows back.
Yeah.
All right, so let me get your bios. You both are different. We're going to let ladies go first.
Okay.
Tell us a little bit about yourself, Whitney.
Okay, so I have a degree in education. So I taught for a few years, and then we had a fertility journey. We struggled to get pregnant. And so in that, we just decided to quit my job and just to take a kind of a load off and just focus on trying to create a family. And that happened. So after 2.5 years of trying, we finally had our son. And in that journey of like staying at home, I knew I could not just stay at home. So like probably 6 months after I quit my job, I started working with Brandon, and I had several business ventures that I tried and was just trying to see what fit. So I have an e-commerce business that I work on. And
would you like to say what that is?
Well, it's actually a mock-up shop. So it's actually something that Brandon and I work on together. So Brandon takes the photos and then I upload, and I'm the business side and things like that. And then I also do some affiliate stuff. So I am creative, and so it has been really great to have that aspect. I also spent some time doing digital marketing. So I took some courses, and I was a freelance digital marketer for a while. So I was the marketing side of our business, and we partnered. There's a trend here. We partner on a lot of things, obviously, but we would have clients where we'd work together. We actually still have a client where we're still working on it together. But I really felt like through that, I love the marketing side, but I really wanted to market our businesses and our ventures. So that's where I'm at now. We also have a 3-year-old at home. So I'm like kind of the best of both worlds. I'm a working mom, but I'm also kind of a stay-at-home mom because she's still with me. So that's where I'm at. I wear a lot of hats.
That's beautiful. I love that so much. Well, tell me what your role was in this film, because I noticed that there were not a lot of crew members on this film, and that you probably had a hand in a lot of what was going on. So tell me what you did.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So, well, really, this To Die for the documentary came as a passion project, really to both of us. But I felt almost like we had a golden ticket. This eliminating dyes transformed our family, transformed our child, transformed the trajectory of his life. And it was so dramatic. And it was, if you were to tell me that this was your experience with your child, I would struggle to believe that it was completely true, because it is that dramatic of a shift. So we knew that we had something. We knew that there were families that were struggling like ours. And so we felt almost an urgency to get this information out. So I was just kind of obsessed with the science and trying to figure out like how could a food or an additive affect our behavior. And so I wanted to speak with researchers, because after reading like all the jargon and the abstracts and the research, I didn't understand it. So I wanted to interview these researchers and ask them my questions. And I asked Brandon if he'd be willing to document our journey. And with reluctancy, he eventually said yes. And so we've just tackled it. I've been the marketing side. I've set up all the interviews. I created the questions. We worked on the questions together, but I actually asked the questions during the interview. So I'm directing in that way. Brandon and I tag team that, but I was like kind of the main spearheading that. And then the digital marketing side, I've worked with social media. I'm doing the emails. I've built our audience. And I mean, Brandon has done all the heavy lifting with the filmmaking. Like that's obviously his baby, but it's been really cool to like also him pull me in his office and be like, hey, what do you think about this? So we've really tackled that together as well. So, I mean, our roles mesh for sure. We stay in our lane. Like, I know what I'm good at and I know what he's good at, and I default to him in those areas. But like, it is a little bit meshed together.
That's beautiful. Well, Brandon, talk about then what your role is and what your lane is. And by the way, I just realized, Whitney, when you said the title, we haven't said the title. So, Brandon, why don't you tell us the title and explain? There is a different spelling there, so you'll need to clarify that because we're not really visual. And tell us the title and a little bit more about why you chose that title, what your role is. And
so the name of the film is To Die for the Documentary. You spell that D-Y-E instead of D-I-E. Die as in food dye. And I guess, I don't know, I'm a big fan of play on words, and thinking of titles for the film, I threw that out there, and when he's like, yeah, that's good. So
he's really a wordsmith. He traveled, he toured in a band in his 20s. So like, he's so good at songwriting and wordplay, and like, I felt like that was genius.
Yeah, I liked it too.
What's funny is one of the very first things we did, because, my background. So when me and Whitney first met, I was in like a weird spot in life. I had played music.
I'm insanely curious. So it doesn't matter, but on the podcast, but how did you meet? Tell me that.
Well, we met at.
Be truthful.
Okay, so I had a buddy who had gone to college for a little while and then stopped going to college. But we have a college in our city called Dalton State College, and so it's like it's a university system college, but it's very local. And so like, he's like, "Do you want to go to the BCM? So the Christian, the Baptist
Collegiate Ministry.
Do you want to go to the BCM today and get like some free food? They have lunch today." And so I was like, sure. So we went, and Whitney was there, and they had known each other from college. And so they talked to each other, and like, Whitney didn't even look at me. She like,
creeper vibes.
Yes. I mean, and it was just a weird interaction. Like,
maybe it's because his tattoos matched his shirt, and you're like,
I didn't have any tattoos at the time. At the time, I didn't have any. But yeah, so like later on, maybe a week or two later, like, he said her name, and I didn't know who he was talking about. So I looked on Facebook to see who he was talking about, and it was her. And so I was like, I'm gonna add her on Facebook.
So he slid into my DMs.
Yeah, and then I reached out to her, and so then we started talking. And I had also seen her. I'd seen her before too, because we went to the same church. Like, on occasion, we have a pretty big church. We have a multi-site campus church, and even in our the one in our city had two separate buildings
venues
at the time, two different venues. And so I'd seen her on occasion. And so that was kind of my first line. Like, hey, don't you go to Rockbridge? And so we started talking, and she was actually kind of dating somebody at the time, and told me that. And I was like, that's fine. And then we just talked more and more, and eventually she decided that she liked me.
No, he actually sent me a music video like that he was in, and he's the lead singer. And I was like, done. I'm done. This guy, I don't know what was his name.
Awesome. Well, we
weren't actually dating. I do want to clear the record. Like, we weren't dating. I was talking to someone. We'd never even kissed, so it was not serious.
But and so I was in the middle of this like transition between, my late teenage years, my early 20s. I had been in music and played music, and that's what I'd wanted to do, and it didn't work out. And so I had worked with my dad through that whole time, and got to a point in my life. I had a marriage that was not healthy, and a very, very, very short marriage. And so when that ended, I went through a transition and stopped working for my dad, and I had some money saved up, and I spent all that, and I had gotten a job as a security guard. So I was a third shift security guard when Whitney met me.
But he had such potential. But
I had been doing photography and a little bit of video stuff on the side, and I was trying to, like, my dream was to work for myself and do that. And I ended up like getting a video job at a rug company, like just a one-off job to come film their market and do like a highlight video. And I did that. They offered me a job on the spot. Turned out to end up, like, I almost didn't take it. She talked me into taking it, because I was in that, I want to work for myself. I don't want to work for I don't want to take a job where I make so much.
I don't want to work for the man.
Well, and it was a really good pay raise, and I was like, I might get comfortable there, and I might not. I didn't want to like get comfortable with how much I was making. And so, but what it did was it allowed me to, because I was living way under my means at the job that I had before. So I all of a sudden had this big pay raise, but my standard of living didn't change. So I was able to like invest in equipment and spend time, invest in my craft and do work on the sides. I basically had like 2 full-time jobs.
And he saved up like 20,000 so he could eventually
I
like
saved
quit
up
his job.
like a half a year's pay or something. And so I did a personal project that ended up going viral. I did like a photo series of like first responders, like police officers and firefighters, but it was like movie poster style pictures. And it was like this project called Not All Wear Capes. And it really blew up. And, I had Yahoo flew us out to New York to put us on like the weekly Flickr, and Meredith Vieira talked about us on her show back when she had the Meredith Vieira show. So it was really cool. But what that did was kind of kick off my commercial photography business. And I was eventually making more on the side than I was at my job. And so I was able to, 2 weeks before we got married, I quit my job and started working for myself full time. So for a long time, I focused primarily on photography, and I ended up in the commercial photography world, like advertising and things like that. And then eventually video work started creeping back in. So now I kind of do both. I do probably about 50-50, advertising, photography, and then advertising video work. So
it's nice that they make those awesome DSLR cameras where you can do both. Makes it pretty easy. But I do know that once you start doing both, it does get you do want to do a little more. Oh, well, let me get another camera. Once you're a gearhead, always a gearhead, and you just keep wanting to expand your craft, you need a little bit more equipment. I know how that goes.
That's a constant conversation.
Yes,
he's always
I'm
like,
sure
this
it
job
is.
will cover it. And I'm like, that's not the point of the job. The point of the job is to pay our bills. No.
Well, that's awesome. So it sounds like, you guys are very fortunate to find each other, and that your skills are very complementary, and they came together to culminate, in A, solving a problem for your child, and B, being able to document it. I have to tell you just my own experience watching the film. I didn't really know what to expect when I watched it, and I was a little bit skeptical, simply because I have children on the spectrum, and I've heard about this food dye thing. And of course, this was back in the early 90s, and there was so much misinformation back then, and so many people who were talking about weird things of causing all these children's behaviors. And so I didn't give it very much credence. But I was really looking forward to talking to you today. And of course, I needed to watch the film. And very, 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 very early in, I was like, oh my goodness, I need to watch more of this. And I was very impressed with all of it. Incredibly impressed with how you put the story together. It was beautifully shot. It was super creative, very, very, very creative in the ways that you did the transitions, or just the storytelling mechanisms that you used and how you used them. I love how you involved yourself in the story. I remember this decision I had to make when I first made this story that kind of was about me. I didn't want to be in the story, though, because I didn't want it to be about me. I wanted it to be about the subject matter. So I tried to take me out of it. And it wasn't until we tried to make the movie and everybody's like, this movie sucks. It's your story. Why aren't you in the story? And I had to then redo the whole film. So I know that push-pull conversation of, should I be in the story? Well, you guys hit that part out of the park. I think you were right to make that decision. And I think this is an incredibly important film. I think that everybody should see this film. I don't think it's just for people with children who need to understand color dyes. I think everybody needs to understand this. I mean, the fact that we are still eating food with dyes that can poison and give us cancer, even as adults, and the government knows it, and everybody knows it, and we still have it going on, is just beyond my comprehension. And so I do think many, many, many more people need to hear this. So I was super excited to hear you say it's really not about the documentary. It's really about creating a community and a movement. And we want to make sure that that people hear this story. So I do want to talk a little bit about the movie itself. So the story. We want to talk about how you put the story together, because I want our audience to understand, you know, the details of the story and in the way you decided to tell it. And then I want to talk about the mechanisms, like how you told the story. So first, give us the meat of the story.
Yeah, well, thank you. First of all, everything you said, wow, thank you.
Thank you.
That felt good. I mean, we don't have very many people that have actually seen our film, and we have only we've had 3 filmmakers. Now you're number 3 that have watched it, and so thank you. Like, that's very kind of
You're
you to
welcome.
say.
I
And
don't
we
I don't
also
I don't tell people things that I don't mean. So
well, thank you
Oh,
so
thank
much.
you. We had that same tug and pull with like being, or I did have that same tug and pull with like being in the film. We very much wanted a film that was like the content that we liked, and something that Brandon especially loves is like blog style. So we were like, I kind of want to pull that in there. Like we wanted to tell our journey, and I for sure was like, I knew that was the best decision for the film, but putting myself out there personally was not something I wanted to do. Like I do not feel comfortable in the spotlight. I don't feel comfortable people knowing who I am or my kids, but at the same time, I grew to feel comfortable with it, because it felt very inauthentic to not put our story in there, to ask people to be in it and to tell their stories. And knowing that our story could impact so many people, it was important that we made that decision. So I get that tug and pull. But as to speaking to your question, Brandon definitely would be better to answer that.
Yeah. So I know I wanted to do, like she said, a little bit of like blog style. I'm looking at my phone right now because I can't think off the top of my head what the name of the YouTube channel is, but there's a YouTube channel that I really love. My mind is just gone blank. I'm trying to find who they are.
Loves it so
Well,
much he doesn't know the
now
name.
that you said, you wanted it to have that vlog feel, now I get what you were doing. It did have a
Yeah.
very fresh kind of younger
Youth.
generation feel to it, which maybe that's why I felt like it was so different. It is
Mhm.
more of what you would see on YouTube or what the younger
Exactly.
generation is
Yeah.
doing. And
But kind of a mix. We wanted it to feel very like professional, but we wanted it to this is heavy content and it's a
Yeah.
lot of information, but we wanted it to come across in a very easy to listen to way that, I mean, people spend hours on their phone, but like watching a documentary about just science, I mean, would be very difficult to listen to 80 minutes of just science. So we wanted to make it feel easy.
Yeah. So the YouTube channel I'm talking about, so there's a YouTube channel called Yes Theory, and they're a group of guys that they do these challenges where they like either they'll find a stranger and take them traveling or visit a.
This has nothing to do with the film.
But it's just the way that they tell their information and the way they engage with people. I was really drawn to that, so I kind of wanted to bring some of that style in, and we didn't do a ton of like straight holding a camera because I thought us talking with we didn't do a whole lot of like that vlog style, but like
like
you
a
said,
mix.
like you said in our pre-interview, like breaking the fourth wall. We do that from time to time, and so we wanted it to feel like people were going with us on this journey because we feel like we had a cool story in the fact that we had never made a film before, that our experience is what inspired the film, and so that we kind of wanted to have that vibe. And then, like she said, we wanted to talk to the researchers and all the science side of the film, but we also wanted to talk to families because, like, yes, people in the science community could watch our film and get something out of it, but we kind of kept a lot of the science stuff like not too like we wanted to keep it where it was digestible. You know what I mean? But the meat of our film really is the families who have been affected similar to our story, and like
Because that's what people remember. I mean, you could spend an hour in a seminar just about facts, and if they tell one story, you're going to remember that story. So we tried to like do a mix of the two.
well, what gave us comfort, and especially what gave Whitney comfort when we were going through our journey, was when she would find a mom who was going through something similar, or she would find a family that okay, this we're not crazy. This isn't something we're not making this up. This is a real thing. And so, the way I look at the film is we're telling these people's stories, and then we have the science and the research to back it up and like to show, okay, these people aren't crazy. This is a real thing.
yeah, what I loved was there was a sense of fun, particularly in the beginning. The colors were bright because you are talking about these dye colors. And it really was interesting because the colors that you use, they are beautiful. So they're
Exactly.
bright, they're beautiful, and the film has these beautiful colors in them, and they look wonderful for you, right?
Yep.
And so, but here we are talking about how these bright colors are killing us in
Well,
our
that's
food.
exactly what it is. That's marketing. We did our marketing well. We knew our audience, and that's exactly what synthetic dyes are. They are used to market food and to make them look appealing so that we buy them. They're cosmetic. And so that's so funny that you made that connection that was appealing, because you're exactly right. Bright, beautiful colors are appealing, and we just need to know what they're doing to us.
Yeah, and then there was this sense of, we are going on this journey with you. You broke the third wall in that. I mean, there was this one time where you're talking and you turn the camera directly to yourself and, are talking about what you're doing. And that happened, I mean, that kind of feel was definitely there. But at the same time, your interviews were, I mean, there were talking head interviews there with experts, there were talking head interviews with families. But the other thing that softened it, I think, is that you had some pretty good reenactments, and these reenactments were really just to augment the story. So we're just not looking at someone just sitting there telling a story. And I thought you did a beautiful job of that, where you were thoughtful about how you cast the actors to look similar to the people you're interviewing, but in a younger age. And it was just really, I thought, genius. And it looked like a memory. You shot it in sort of shadowy memory style, and it melted beautifully with the interviews that you were telling. So I thought you did a remarkable job with the shooting of that and the way that you edited that. And it was so interesting to me because I knew in a way that nobody in there were actors, including the two of you, but everyone was so well spoken, was so interesting to listen to. They were very, very interesting people. They were just joyous people to watch. They kind of all drew you in. That's what I felt like. Like, I wanted to lean in and hear more. The sound was great. Usually in documentaries where people do things by themselves, the sound's not so great. So you did a great job with that. Tell me about the other thing that was so interesting to me were the transitions you decided to use between things. So tell me about that choice.
Yeah, we would transition from, I would a lot of times do like a establishing shot, a drone shot into an interview, like where somebody lives, or we would use a transition to transition into I think
Just a different section.
my brain went blank. An animation. So we had to transition to an animation. The one shot you're talking about where I broke the fourth wall, so at that time it was something, I was editing something and then something that the guy was talking about was happening in the news. There was something in California literally happening at the time. And I just I'm going to do this shot. I'm going to try this shot out where I do like a pause video effect, and I'm going to pull the camera out. And then I turned the camera on myself. So I was in the editing station and pulled it out and kind of talked about what's happening in the news. And so I know that was going to work, but it worked. So it was just,
it really did work. And you had this animation where it was like a piece of paper and it would kind of wrap up and then you would be pushed into
that.
So what was that? How did that work? Or why did you choose that? And why did you choose that?
We wanted to have kind of we looked into ways that we introduced so this film, we had to be creative a lot. We have a small budget that we're working with. It's just the two of us. We would have loved to have worked with an animator. That would have been great. But we're like, how can we do things on our own and make them look good? So we kind of figured out a style. We figure out that kind
It's
of.
kind of like a 90s grunge MTV vibe.
Yeah, we
It
were-
is. It
Like,
is.
and we both love that style.
Well, like
It
you
is.
have the teen mom style where it's, a lot of times it's like animation or stop
It's like
motion.
so much a mix of everything that we love. And like
Yeah.
the shows that have shaped us, literally Teen Mom, love Teen Mom, like the OG. But like that's so cool. We went back and forth, like we would talk about that quite a bit, and we landed on that. And like Brandon was able to create such a cool style for himself. And he is not an animator, but he is obviously like a creative genius.
Luckily, I know my way around After Effects well enough that I was able to, I'd licensed a couple of templates that had like this huge library of these assets, like the opening paper and things like that. And so like, I was able to take my ideas and use that and build out kind of that stop motion. It's not as complicated as like building out a cartoon or like an animated thing. And so it was pretty neat. It was pretty fun. And like you said, we were able to put a little bit of humor from time to time using those things. And so,
Yeah.
I'm kind of like a jack of all trades when it
He
comes to like,
is.
I know the Adobe Suite pretty well, and I've,
He also built our house. Like he remodeled it. He
Oh
literally is
my
like Superman.
goodness. You really hit the jackpot, my friend.
Oh, I know. And I mean, he was just a security guard with gauges. I
know.
mean,
Who
who would have
knew?
known? I also want to point out that Brandon even composed the music. Like we didn't have it in the budget to pay anybody to do any of the animation or the music or anything. Like for the casting, like we did all of that. So it's interesting that you were talking about the characters and how they did such a good job, our actors in their reenactments, because that has 100% been a God thing. Like, and I could tell you a God story with almost every aspect of this film, honestly. Like it has become a film that we could not have crafted. And each of the people that are in it, like it's just been crazy that the fact that we have friends and family that could do this and that look like our characters. And it's just been amazing. And I could talk literally just the podcast. I could talk the entire time about like God and how he has worked through this and how cool that's been. So
it's just been a series of doors opening one after another. Like this is going to be, we would think this is going to be really hard to get this person to agree to be in our film. But then we got one person. Oh, well, I already know that person. I can reach out to them for you. So it's been a lot of stuff like that. So it's been really cool.
I mean, that doesn't mean that it's been easy. Like the time
No.
commitment and the strain on our family and like so many late nights since we're both working. Like it has not been physically easy, but actually putting it together and the pieces coming together have come together very easy. And that's like 100% God ordained. Like we do believe that he wants us to use our talent, our gifts, the equipment that he's given us to help people. So glory to God for sure.
Absolutely. That mirrors what I say on this podcast all the time. I mean, I know what you're saying. It's the experience that I live myself. And I do know that he works through our work. And as a Christian, I am not a quote unquote Christian filmmaker, but I absolutely am a filmmaker that is a Christian, and I want to do good art. I want to make beautiful art to the best of my ability that touches people and that affects and changes their lives in a positive way.
Amen.
And I know that you do too. I see that in your work.
Yeah, and like that, I love that you said that because like our God is such a creative God. And that's so
Mhm.
cool that we are made in his image and that
Yeah.
he made us as creatives to glorify him, even though this is not a Christian film. Like there's so many people that we have talked to on this journey about our relationship with the Lord and even mentioned it in podcasts. So sometimes as Christians, you kind of feel like a second class citizen because you don't work in a church, but like if everybody worked in a church, who would talk to the rest of the people. So I think that's really cool that we align in that.
Absolutely. I just think I was talking to somebody about this the other day. When I first started out in this industry, I was scared to death to tell people that I was a Christian or to talk about my faith. And I just did not want to be hated or ostracized or made fun of, or I also didn't want people to think that I was judging them. And I kept it all to myself and very quiet. And then when I was traveling with a theater company and everybody was doing drugs or sleeping around, and it was just such an uncomfortable environment for me as a 20-year-old, 22-year-old, I didn't know what to do. And so I just left. And of course, as I got older, what I realized was we are all created with gifts and abilities. in so many different ways. And we do not have to be in the church or a missionary or some sort of, divine work in order to be doing God's work wherever we are. He puts people in every single place to do his work. And if we weren't doing that, who would know his love? He loves the world through his people in every single industry. And I think that is our calling, to be who we are in the midst of this world, doing what we're doing in a way that honors him. And that's my calling. It sounds like that's what your calling is. And when you're in that stream and you're doing your best, it's to glorify the Lord in what you're doing. There is such a peace, even though it is hard. And even though you feel like every day you're going to die, and are you doing the right thing? I would not trade the difficulties with my film for anything in the world, because it is those difficulties that cause you to seek help, to seek God. And also in the deep is where you see him work. There's this is not a Christian podcast, I'm sorry, but I cannot not talk about these things. There's a psalm, Psalm 107, that is my favorite psalm. And it talks about how all of these people, they have these troubles, and they cry out to the Lord, and he comes to their rescue. And my favorite one is like the last stanza. It's sort of written as a stanza, and as in like a song or something. But in the last one, it says these sailors went out in ships, and they went out into the deep, and this storm came up, and they were at their wits' end. And they called out to the Lord, and he rescued them, and they saw him do his wonders in the deep. And that is how I felt, every time pretty much making my movie, that I was at my wits' end. I cried out to the Lord, and I saw him do his incredible wonders in the deep. And that's, what it taught me was that in those dark places and those difficult times, we have to learn to be thankful for those and think, okay, on the other side, just hang in there. There's going to be something beautiful, and you will learn something new, right?
Very true.
Very cool.
Very cool.
So speaking of that, we talked earlier about your process. We talked about working together as a married couple. We talked about just some of the things that you wanted to talk about that you don't normally get to talk about. Usually your podcasts are more about the medical part of it. What do you really want to talk about this film that was fun or different?
I really want to highlight, Whitney is humble about what she's done, but she has done an incredible job. One of the things that is unique about our film and unique about our process, and one of the selling points, I think, to a lot of distributors that might end up being interested, is like we have built a pretty decent sized audience completely organically on our own. She is, she's combined a bunch of different strategies. When we first started, I guess when we first started this journey, she was in a die-free Facebook group on Facebook, but she decided to start her own Facebook group just as a different angle, and kind of focus on what we call swaps and stuff like that, where, people come on and like, I really like this particular item. Is there a die-free version of that's kind of, comprehensible? And
we started that so we could go ahead and start helping people and hearing stories.
Yeah, kind of to share what we had learned, and to get the word out there. And like that group exploded. Within the 2 years that we've been working on the film, it's grown from 0 to 570 something thousand people in this Facebook group. And like what the cool thing about that is it's really shown us our audience. It's kind of shown us who we should be focusing on. Yeah. So we have really good analytics with Facebook that show us, that group is 95% moms.
98%. Well, the group is 98% females ages 24 to 44. And we know where they live, where they come from, what goes viral, what they think, how they speak. So like, and I am in that age demographic, obviously, and I'm a female. So like, it's been really cool to help people, obviously, and then to just really get to know our audience and really get to know their pain points. And like, we have been students of, people that are affected by synthetic dyes. And one interesting thing that we did after we reached about 77 or 7,000, sorry. After we reached about 7,000 in the group, I was like, well, I really want to there's a particular list that I made. I made a list of synthetic dyes, and I made a list of surprising places that you can find dyes, like in marshmallows, spinach wraps, like just these random places you'd never expect. And that seemed to be really helpful with people. So I wanted to create like resources to give people so they could go ahead and get started on their journey. And I created a blog to help people eliminate dyes. So I asked people before they join the group. Facebook has an option where you can ask them a question before they join. And so I asked people if they want to opt into our email list and get those freebies. And so through that, we've grown, we have 150,000 people on our email list. And so that's
That is awesome.
been pretty powerful and been pretty cool because in each of our newsletters, we post updates about our film, obviously. A lot of it is dye related, which any good marketer knows that a good 80% of what you give your audience should be what's useful, and you're not asking for anything. So we haven't had a big ask. Obviously, our film hasn't come out, but we like create lists and things like that. So we have really been students of our audience.
And that group is more broad. It's not focused on the film, but we do have a Facebook.
But it is brought to you by To Die for the Documentary.
Yeah,
so that's in the banner.
We do have a Facebook group for the film, and that we've seen some crazy stuff happen on that Facebook page. So we have 37,000 people, I think, in that group. And we had a post. We were at 12,000 people, and we posted a picture of just me and Whitney, kind of telling our story while we're making the film. And I don't know what happened, but like within about 4 days, it went from 12,000 to 34,000 people. It was like a crazy. I guess that's probably the biggest thing we've seen, like actually go viral.
It's gotten us a lot of attention too. Like an influencer that I had reached out to be in the film, it just didn't work out. We just stopped communicating, I guess, or with her personal assistant. After she saw the post, they reached back out and was like, we're ready. And she has been just incredible to work with. And also we had a company reach out to do a free podcast tour for us. And like, it's just been so crazy. Like even our, we got a grant, and that just came out of nowhere. It was just a God thing. It's just been.
How did you get that grant?
Well, we applied. It's actually a small grant, and it's not a grant that we can say the name. You have to be asked to apply.
Oh.
So like we were invited.
It's one in our. We're a big industrial town, so it's one in our community that we applied for, and we applied for it in like January, and didn't think that we got it, and then December rolled around of last year, and like, hey, we're ready to.
Like a week after we finished our second crowdfunding campaign. Like it was crazy.
Now, who did you do your crowdfunding with?
So our first one we did with Indiegogo, and that one went pretty well. And then we decided that we wanted to do. So our first one was just kind of, can we even make this film? Can we raise enough money to get us from city to city while we're filming?
We thought that's all we needed. Since we were doing all the work, we thought all we needed was the funds to cover our travel. So the first one did cover our travel to all but a couple. And then we spent initially to film the fundraising video. We spent quite a bit of money of our own money to like put together a video to try to get people to give people a proof of concept.
Yeah,
so that they would
we
donate.
paid for our trips for our very first interviews, and then so we probably personally put $20,000 into the film of our personal money, and then.
And what was the total budget?
Well, we thought it was going to be $10,000. Honest, I'm going to be real honest. With things like the budget and how much we need, and like we honestly thought that all we needed was to cover our travel. So every time something came up, we were like, okay, well, we're gonna have to figure this out. And we just magically have had exactly the amount we needed, or just like last week, somebody just randomly gave us even more funds on one of our fundraising, or I think it was Indiegogo. So she got a producer credit. So we wrote a budget, but it's not what, like, you would laugh.
Well, they
would laugh at my budget. We had no idea that we need lawyers. We had no idea we needed E&O insurance. We had no idea that we would need a consultant, and our consultant has been super helpful. So yeah, our budget's laughable. I don't even know that
our budget on paper, if you wrote out our budget's about $250,000. But of course, total. we did so much on our own that we haven't made anything. I could have, I don't know, I've worked a full-time job doing this whole thing and making
Oh,
nothing.
sure.
Yeah,
Sure.
we've put money in, then we've had to stop taking some work so we can finish the films.
When
Right.
we say we've done everything, we literally, other than being on the other side of the camera, we've done everything. The editing, luckily we did that Seed and Spark. Seed and Spark, we had a successful campaign, and a couple of weeks ago we got an email that said, if you had a successful campaign and you got this many followers, we have like limited amount of all these things. So we ended up getting there's a thing called InCrawl. It's like a company called InCrawl. They do like in
Yep, I know
credits.
that company. Yep.
And so we get like a pro level of them for free, which is pretty cool. Like, you can just upload your credits to them and spits it out, and it's not something we have to like spend a whole bunch of time on. And then we got like 5 hours of consulting from Picture Motion, I think it was called. So, but yeah, so we're doing everything. So we haven't that we're trading our time. So it's costing us time.
Would we suggest it? I don't know that
I don't know that I would
suggest it.
suggest doing every single thing by yourself. I mean, if you don't have the money, then
it is pretty remarkable. I mean, can you tell me what you've actually spent money wise?
Oh yeah, so we've spent we've spent 20,000 of our own. We've raised 13,000, and then we got a $15,000 grant.
We've raised 13.
Somebody do that math.
I think we raised like 13 on Indiegogo, but of course they get a percentage of it, and then we raised like another 10.
See, like this is what's embarrassing. We don't even know, honestly.
Seed and Spark.
We just know
and then we got a $16,000 grant.
Well, it's actually really remarkable that it was just the two of you, that it didn't cost. I mean, it doesn't sound like it cost more than $50,000. $60,000. $60,000.
About 60.
And how long did it take you?
2 years.
2 years.
I mean, really, truly.
Forever for us.
In my opinion, that is remarkable. You've done a remarkable job. You really, really have.
We could have expenses coming up, like you said, that we don't know about.
Now that is the thing. There will be expenses. And when do you count? When do you like stop counting what the film cost? I mean, I just now, how long am I out? 5 years out. We were doing the theatrical distribution, and I spent $4,000. Well, does that count as part of this film budget?
For sure.
It's distribution.
Yeah.
Right now, I'm doing these events. I'm doing 7 events through the end of the year, and I've got to spend money to do X, Y, Z. Is that part of the film budget? Who knows? I mean, I'm still spending money, and it just does not seem to end if you're going to continue, working with your film. I mean, some people just give the film to the distributor and they walk away and they hope they make money, I suppose. But with my film, and I'm assuming it's going to be even more true with your film, it has become much more than that. It is something that moves people. It brings people together. It is for a community. It's talking about something that's more than just an entertainment thing. And it's something that I care passionately about. So I'm going to create these events and be a part of these events because I care about touching people's lives and making a difference. And it sounds like that's going to be the same for you guys.
Yeah, we're excited to start doing it in person. I can't wait to watch. I mean, we've done like some test screenings and some like feedback screenings.
It's important to know, if you're a filmmaker and you have not done test screenings, we didn't know about this until our consultant told us we needed to do it. Our film is completely different and so much better. I mean, it's painful, especially for Brandon. It was really painful, but at the same time, it was so, so, so helpful.
Absolutely. I did a year of them.
Not committing to that.
Took my 2-hour film down to an hour and a half, but I also used it as a fundraising thing because I did need both of those, and it was incredibly helpful. But the first time you see an audience watch your film, there is nothing like it. There is nothing like it.
I'm sure you had a lot of tears in yours.
Yes,
I cried at least 10 times watching your film, and I'm not kidding.
Really?
Yes, I was so moved by those cute little men. They were so sweet, and like every time they cried, I would cry.
Yeah,
So
I had some wonderful people in my film for sure. And to watch people watch the film even now. I mean, I've seen it. I wish I knew how many times I've seen it. It's got to be thousands now. But just to watch them laugh at the right times and cry at the right times, and there's a communal experience. I mean, that's what I would say to filmmakers. Gosh, get your film into a theater, even if you have to four-wall it and invite people yourself, because watching a film together with a group of people and having this experience and talking about it afterwards, there just is nothing like it. Just nothing like
It's
it.
art.
So,
We're excited
yeah.
about that. We're excited because, like you said, we've done mostly feedback screenings. So everybody comes in there knowing that they need to be kind of critical. They need to everybody wants to find something to
And we
talk about.
invited critical people for a reason.
Yeah.
We asked for.
So we're excited about actually just, this is the
Enjoy.
film, this is what it is, enjoy it, and like seeing that.
And so what are your plans from here on out?
So we are taking a very unique approach. I mean, we will do a bit of the festival circuit, but like that's our main focus is to get this information out to the public. And so we're creating a strategy that we've never really heard of, or I guess I'm combining like influencer marketing, social media strategy, and that we know that this is like, it's in the news, people are talking about it, it's obviously viral. Like a lot of our content has gone very, very viral. Our posts have gone very viral. So there's a lot of content creators and influencers on Instagram and whatever podcasts and that are wanting us to talk about this. So we're partnering with influencers that already have a built audience, and we're going to share our film with those audiences.
we're going to do like set up private screenings with their audiences and things like that.
Do live Q&As.
Do like a
and
virtual.
You had mentioned
Q&As.
a service that you had used. Let's talk about that service.
The service we're going to use. We've had an initial meeting with them, and like, look, we haven't actually done a virtual screening yet, but like they've talked to us, and our consultant like knows them really well, and it's called Kinema. It's like cinema with a K.
Yep.
And I think the girl who started it actually, originally she started Picture Motion. She was the founder of Picture Motion, which is like an impact strategy organization. They help films like come up with their impact strategy. And then I think she moved into this, but they have a really cool platform. And there's also Show and Tell. They have another like virtual screening platform. The cool thing about Kinema though is it's a monthly fee. So I think it's like around $40 a month. And there is no limit to like how big the audience can be. And you can do virtual screenings. They have it set up where you can do like a window. So you can have your film available for like a 3-day window. So if it's not like an event, you could, an organization could license your film for their audience and give their audience like a 3-day window to go and watch it. So there's like all these different ways that they're kind of like the middle person to connect you to license it to organizations and influencers and things like that. So
yeah, that's wonderful. Do you have any other tools or suggestions for filmmakers that you've discovered in this new process? You guys sound like you're kind of on the cutting edge of figuring out new tools and things. Is there anything else you've stumbled upon that you would recommend?
I would say, like, I think what has made our film unique is that we have looked at it like no one has ever done a documentary before. Like, we kind of pretending like we are the first people that's ever done it and just creating the ship as we are in it kind of thing. And I think that creatively is a really good strategy, just to pretend like you have never seen like the standard and what a film should look like and just really stretch your creative muscles. I know it's not necessarily what you're asking, but I do think that the most interesting films that I've ever seen are like that, in that I've never seen anything like it. So I think that would be a tip that I would give.
Yeah, and I don't know if a lot of filmmakers use this tool, but like we said, I would have loved to have hired a composer or licensed a bunch of music. But like the more we looked into that, the cost of that was like going to be so much, and so I ended up like I have a musical background. I've been in bands, and so like I think I can make this work. And so there's a software called Splice, which is pretty cool. It's a subscription based. And you can buy loops, and so you can build songs from these like loops and create your music. And so they're like, I don't know, it's really cool. It's a really cool tool and gives you like a starting point. You're not having to like come up with a song like completely from nowhere. And the way the license work, they're all like, you own the rights to whatever you make with it. And like you might have somebody out there in the world who has used that same loop in their song. And there's actually like really big artists who make their songs using Splice too. So it's a pretty cool tool that I don't know the music world uses it all the time. Like, producers and stuff like that, when they're producing songs, they use Splice tons of times. But like, I don't know how many filmmakers are making their own music that way, because music is pretty expensive if you have to license it and stuff like that. And
it really, really is. It's not only is music expensive to license, but to find out who owns the licenses of the music and all of that, trying to track all that down, man, and know what the standards are. It's nuts.
We did license one song, but it was from a friend.
Yeah.
She actually was the actress, the blonde actress, but she's also a singer and songwriter. So we licensed one of
the
hers.
song that goes into the credits, that's her song. So we did license that one song from her.
That's awesome. Well, you guys, our time is up, and I'm sad. Well, let me say this: did you bring a documentary to share?
Okay.
Yeah.
You can go first. I gotta remember what the name of mine is.
Okay. Now, before you say that, I have to say, now it's time for everybody's favorite section, DocuView Dèjà Vu. All right, Whitney.
Okay, so I think I really like a series called Not So Pretty.
Okay.
It kind of is along the same vein, but it looks at like cosmetics and like just products that women use all the time that have not so pretty consequences. So I really like that one.
Do you know where you can
this
find
was so hard. It's on HBO. I think the HBO original, right? Or Max.
Max.
We're going to say that. I think that's what it is. But I'm not 100%.
All right, Brandon, are you ready?
Yes, I'm trying to remember the name of it.
All right, well, while you're favorite YouTube channel,
I'll give you mine.
Okay.
Yeah, I got one. So I'm really excited to talk about this actually, because I couldn't believe it. So I was traveling last week. My son, Jonah, he's my third son, called me out of the blue and said, "Hey mom, can you be at Fort Campbell on Thursday? I'm having my re-enlistment ceremony." Of course, these kids give you so much time. And of course I went. And on the way down there, I watched a movie on United, which my movie is on, by the way, in case you're flying United, make sure you watch The Girl Who Wore Freedom. I didn't watch that movie though. I watched another one called Brandy Hellville. Anybody heard of that? You guys heard of Brandy Hellville? Did you ever wear Brandy Melville clothes, Whitney?
Oh, no.
No. Okay. Well, this documentary is about the Brandy Melville, the clothing designer or the clothing store, the clothing brand, and about this trend that girls in middle school and high school were obsessed with this clothing. And it's called fast fashion. And these girls were killing themselves to try to get this brand. And it went into just this controlling nature this brand had that began on Instagram, and how this obsession with this brand kind of took over. And what was behind the brand was just awful. What the owner was doing and how he was running the business and how it played out with the girls that worked there. And it was something that I could not have imagined. And I didn't get to finish it on the plane. So then I was like, okay, where can I find this on my phone later that evening? And so it's on Max. And it really is just very tragic, because it went into the fact that it's not just these, a bad owner hooking girls on fast, fashion clothes, but it showed the detrimental situation where we are in this disposable society where we don't really treat anything as precious. It's all here today, gone tomorrow, whether it's our phone for a year or our shoes or our clothes. We'll just get another one. And a lot of the clothes are not well made enough where, we'll just get a cheap thing and throw it away because I'll get another one, when this one runs out. And there is actually a plan behind the designers who use cheap fabric and things like that so that you'll go and buy another this, that, or the other thing. But a lot of that stuff is ending up, when we donate it, it then gets sold, and it gets sold and goes to other places and other third world countries. Then it gets sold again. Wow. And then it ends up in our oceans and everything else. They showed just where it's all landing. So it was very eye-opening, and as you can tell, I was hot under the collar about it a little
Wow.
bit. So
That's
anyway,
cool.
all right, that was mine, Brandy
All
Hellville.
right.
What about yours?
So I have two, but I won't, I'll talk briefly about both of them. So the one that I had to look up the name of, it's so I was in rock bands and stuff growing up, so this might like discredit me, but I also I really liked boy bands. And so like a few years ago, the Backstreet Boy documentary came out, like Show 'Em What You're Made Of, and it kind of
Yeah.
told your story, like dove into their story of how they, I mean, there's a lot of different documentaries now about that, but how they came to be and how, what's his name? We just watched another documentary, and the guy that put them together, and how they ended up suing him eventually, and like it's a pretty cool story. And then it
I
has them
love
coming.
band documentaries. Like
Yeah.
I watched I talked before about the Go-Go's documentary. I love that, and I've seen a few others. Band documentaries are really cool, actually.
It's good. It's very nostalgic. It's right
Yeah.
around the time the late '90s and the early 2000s. That's when I was in high school, and so yeah, it's cool to see. And then my other one, since you've seen my documentary, you know that I like. There's a brief section there about me and Back to the Future.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm a really, really big Back to the Future fan. So there's a documentary called Out of Time, and
Yeah.
it's about this guy named Joe Walsher and his team, and basically it's their story of the original, like the A car from Back to the Future 1, the main DeLorean that they used, ended up on the back lot of Universal, and just kind of like over the years, people would steal pieces off of it, and like the sun damage, and like the car just got like totally trashed. And so it's this story of them like restoring the A car from the Back to the Future, the first film. And
That's
it's
cool.
super cool. And now like when I go out to California, like I always have to go to the Peterson Museum, because now it's in the Peterson Museum, like the big car
I'm
museum
gonna
out
have
there.
to go see it. I love
It's
Back to
super
the
cool.
Future too.
Yeah.
I love the movies that made us, and Back to the
Yes.
Future is in the documentary series, The Movies That Made Us. It was a great film. Well, it's been a delight having you guys on the show today. I really appreciate you coming on, spending the time, opening up your marriage and your faith and your filmmaking process, sharing that with all of us. I really do wish you the best with this project. I think it's remarkable and it needs to be out there. And so I will be praying for you and cheering you on from the sidelines. And we'll have you back when you sort of have gotten down the road a year or so, and you can tell us how everything has gone.
Sounds good. Sounds like a plan.
All right. Well, thank you everybody for listening to Documentary First, where we believe everybody has a story to tell, and you can be the one to tell it. Bye, everybody.